Welcome back, my dear students of class 9. This is Dodashan and Radio Tutoring. Your tutor here is Atsinyo, and this is from the Directorate of School Education, Nagaland. Now, today's class, we are going to continue with our grammar worksheet 1, and the topic is the determiners. You will find it on page 36. Page 36. So now, in the previous class, we have talked about one part of determiners, that is articles, and from there we have learned that articles are of two types, that is definite and indefinite, or in other words we can say specific or non-specific. So in this case too, we are going to go along in that line, all right? I want you to keep in mind specific and non-specific. So now let's take a look at determiners. What are determiners? You have the definition there in your text, and it says determiners are those words that qualify. That qualify. What does it qualify? It qualifies a noun. Now, we have also learned in the previous class about subject and predicate. Subject is usually made up of either pronoun or a noun. So I want you to add this point, that is subject. It also qualifies a subject, tells us more about the subject. In what kind of manner? When we talked about determiners, you need to remember that we are talking about numbers here. Now you may be wondering, this is an English class, what do we have to do with numbers? But let me tell you, in grammar, we have two numbers, that is singular and plural. So here we are talking about numbers, and numbers concerning with singular and plural. All right? So in the previous class, you may have learned that one of our crew members' name is Max. All right? So see, when I put it out in that way, the word one here denotes that it is singular. Or for that instance, if I say an airport, remember that example, an airport, that means it is only one. So we can understand it in that manner, all right? So when we talk about determiners, we are talking about a word that qualifies a noun, that tells us more about the numbers, whether it is singular or plural. So naturally, if it is telling us more about whether the noun or the subject or whatever the object is being discussed there is singular or plural, we are also talking about whether it is specific or non-specific, or we can also say whether it is definite or indefinite. All right, I hope you remember the functions. So the determiners functions as tells us to state as determiners functions as stating more about whether it is specific or non-specific, all right? It also differentiates. Now let me also point out here that another two members of our crew here is by the name Kedyo and Viket. So there are two. And let's say they are, let's just say they are doing a really good job here. So when I say they, we can tell that this is two. That is plural. So likewise, it determiners functions in that way, all right? It denotes numbers, tells us more about it, and it also differentiates, all right? If I say one of them is wearing a blue shirt, all right, then that is differentiating it. So another function here is differentiate. So now you will find that there are numerous numbers of, numerous types of determiners, words, all right? And it is not possible for you to memorize everything. In the textbook also you have only some few examples. So how can you go about with it? By understanding the functions. What does it do in the sentence? What part does it play? So if you're able to understand that, then the rest are not a big problem. Remember, when we deal with grammar, you have to understand the functions. What does it do in the sentence? What is it trying to say? Is it differentiating? Is it telling us more about numbers? Is it specifying? Is it definite? Is it indefinite? And so on, all right? So use those keywords to guide us through in this class. Now, there are different types of determiners. The first one is articles. So articles we have already discussed, so we will not be going through it in detail again, but remember it is a, and, the, and remember there are of two types, definite and indefinite. So see, the here is definite. So when I say the boy, I am being very specific. So in this case, it is functioning as a determiner. All right, the boy in the black shirt, or the crew member in the blue shirt, and so on. So determining it. An, again, let's say an apple. All right, determining the number here. How many? 1. So this is why, even though they are articles, it becomes a part of the family of determiners. Why? Because they are determining, telling us, qualifying the noun. Qualifying the noun. Qualify what? Qualify the number, telling us more about whether it is singular or plural. So it's as simple as that. Now, let's move on to the next one. The second determiner here is demonstrative. So, if you take a look at the word, the name itself suggests demonstrate. So, it is telling us something about demonstrating something. So, for instance, if I say, this is my chalk, I'm demonstrating it, all right? Or the pencil that you are holding right now, or the pen, that is your pen. So demonstrating it, differentiating it. Remember, one of the function is to differentiate. So that is demonstrative. Now you will find plenty of demonstrative examples. We will be going through it, only a few of these. This, that. Let's take a look at these two demonstrative. This board, all right, or that book. This board or that book. Okay, now we also have plural here. Remember, the plural of this, these. So plural of this is these, all right? And see, it is, if I use the demonstrative word this, from there you can tell that we are talking about a singular subject. So remember, number, okay? Or if I use these, okay, let's say I have plenty of dusters here. So these duster, all right, if I put it in that way, you know that there are more than one duster here. So plural. So see, from there we can differentiate that we are talking about numbers. It is specifying. Remember the word specify? It is specifying whether it is more than one, all right, or whether it is just one. So numbers. Now, the demonstrative word here is that, and plural is those. So if you are using the word demonstrative, that, all right, then we already know that we are referring to a singular entity or singular object. And if you are using those books lying there on your table, see, you are demonstrating it to a group of books. And it is not just one book, but more than one. So it is specifying the numbers here. So remember that demonstrative, determiners, all right, determines about numbers. So if you can understand that in general, whatever word comes along, you figure out, all right, you try to think what is its function. Okay, is it specifying? Is it generally talking about the noun and so on. So that will help you figure out the demonstrative pronouns. Remember, these demonstrative pronouns are to use it to differentiate or to demonstrate. So that's our demonstrative pronoun. I'll just give you another example here. This is a word that we made a lot of mistake. That is there. All right, T-H-E-R-E. There here is referring to a place. The spelling is different, the pronunciation is different as to that of T-H-E-I-R. We will come to this very soon, but for now, take a look at this. There, remember, write it down in your book, because even though we hear so much, listen to so much of this correction, we tend to forget. So write it down. There is referring to a place, all right? And you pronounce it as there and not there. So if you're saying there, as you can see, the spelling is also different. There is referring to a person, people, or in this case, pronoun of possession. We will come to that very soon. So there is the difference. I hope you will be able to differentiate it, and when you use it, pronounce it differently, such as there if you are referring to a place, there if you are referring to a person, or for that matter, people. All right? Now let's move on to the next topic. The next one we have is possessiveness. Possessive determiners, in other words, but you may also write down, all right? Possessive pronoun. Okay, when we say possessiveness, here we are referring to possessive pronoun, and we have already learned in our parts of speech the function of a pronoun. It replaces the noun. So such words, some of it are he, she, they, you, and so on. But we are going to specifically look at the possessive pronoun. Why possessive? Because possessive pronouns are those that shows the relation or the belongingness, all right, that states the belongingness. So here, what are those pronouns that states belongingness? Some examples here are mine. These are pronoun. Mine, your, his, her, their. Remember this word there, so it comes under possessive pronoun, all right? So these are some examples. Now, why are these possessive pronouns? Because, like I said, it shows the belonging or the possession. For example, this is my bag. Or let's take another example. This is his bag. Now let's take a look at this. This here is a determiner. We have already discussed it because it is demonstrating it, all right? So this is also a determiner. Now my here is showing possession, and possessive pronoun are always connected to object. Keep that in mind because we will come back to that later on. Object, all right? So my bag, whose bag? My bag, showing possession here. So that is a possessive pronoun. And how is it functioning here? Isn't it specifically specifying that this bag belongs to this person, right? So see, it is functioning as a determiner. So that's why it is a determiner. Now let's take the second example here. This is his bag. Now, his here is again a determiner because it is specifically stating that this bag belonged to him. If you take another example, in order to save time, I'll just put it in this way. Now, let's take these two examples here. This is his bag. We have already discussed this. This is a determiner and that of possessive pronoun, all right? Now, here in this case, her. How is it functioning here? What is its function? Isn't it also showing about possession here? So it becomes a determiner, all right? Now, there is this confusion that how come for other, in some case we use his constantly in other sentences. So now another example here is, for instance, if I just simply say this is his without this example, all right, this is his, and I can also say this is hers, all right? So here is the differences that you will find here. We can use it in these kind of cases and in this kind of cases as well. Now, she is different, all right? Again, common error here is we usually go with the pronoun she. But she here, the possessive pronoun is hers. And regarding his, all right, that is a different case. It does not turn into a new word in this manner, all right? So that's one. Now, another common error with possessive pronoun that we usually made is the word mine. Remember, we have some examples, mine, yours, and so on. So, you know, I have two nephews and they usually quarrel about whenever they are playing with your toys. And the elder one goes and say, this is my one, this is my one. And the other one, the younger one was also saying, no, this is my one, this is my one. So I was wondering, what are they talking about here? They were having a lot of toys there, but my one, you know? So there is, let me tell you, I'm sure you don't use that since you're in class 9, but let me tell you, we usually made the error by saying that this is my one. We do not go, that is wrong, all right? We do not say, this is my 2, this is my 3. You know, we do not say like that. So the correct way to use this is mine, and that itself will suffice, all right? This is mine, that itself will suffice. This is mine, that is yours, that will do. You do not need to add my 1, my 2, and so on, all right? If you say my here, that's a different matter. I hope you will be able to clarify and make that correction. Now, I have already talked about their. So remember, their is also a possessive pronoun and it is also a determiner because it is determining, like I said, it states, specify about noun or qualify about noun or thing. So when it is functioning in that manner, it becomes a determiner. Now, the next one we have is quantifiers. In your text, you will find it as quantifiers, but you can also write down. Now, the next point that we have is quantifiers. In your text, you will find it as quantifiers, but you can also write down frequency, all right? That will also help you understand better. For quantifiers or frequency. Now, remember, determiners has to do with qualifying a noun. It has to do with numbers. So, quantifiers, it tells us about the quantity, all right? In other words, it answers the questions, how much or how many, and qualifies a noun. So, how many apples are in the basket, or how many people are there, all right? And so on. So here it qualifies a noun and it is also suggesting, telling us about numbers here. You know, you can make a rough sketch of how many, or if you want to be specific, remember we are now coming to the word specific. How many people are there? Let's just say there are 5 people. So these become a number here and we will also come to that. 5 people, or we can say some people, all right? So here, these kind of words become a quantifier. So words such as few, some, little, any, and so on are quantifiers, all right? Now, so remember the function. Its function is to qualify. Remember the functions, and remember when you use these words, it tells us whether you are talking about it in a plural sense or in a singular sense. So that is our quantifiers. Now, if you have noted down this frequency, it also tells us about how often an action is being repeated, all right? How many times have you washed your hands today, all right? I've washed it twice, so it becomes a determiner. Frequency, all right? How many times a thing or an action is being repeated. So I've washed my hands twice now, all right? Or thrice, and so on. Those become a determiner. Now, the next point that we have is ordinals. Ordinal here is different from that of your mathematics lesson, all right? Ordinals, some examples are first, second, let's just go with 30th here. Okay, so these are numbers, ordinal numbers, and not just any numbers, but when you use it in this manner, what are you suggesting here? We are talking about it in terms of position. So you write this down, position. All right, ordinals refer to position. He stood first in our class. All right, he was the 30th rank in our class. Okay, so see, it is telling us about the position. He came second in the race. Position, all right? So see, isn't it specifying things? So it is following the function of a determiner here. So see, that's why you need to remember the functions, all right? No need to worry about, oh, there are so many examples here in the text, I will never be able to remember enough, you know? No need to do that. Remember its functions. Is it specifying it? Yes. So, which means it is definite. It is specifying that he stood first in the class, specifically pointing it out. You know, so it becomes a determiner. This word here becomes a determiner. Now, the next one that we have is cardinals. Now, cardinals are the exact number, all right? Here, more specifically, if they point it out, this is different from position here, all right? There are two people, or 7, 5, 6, and so on, all right? Specifically, when it is being used in that way, all right? Two, let's say, oranges. How many? 2. So again, referring to number. See, so it is functioning in that way, and that's why we can say that it is a determiner. So that is what we have just discussed on determiners. There are different types of determiners, but and different examples, but remember its functions. It is to qualify a noun. It tells us more about how much, all right, or whether it is singular or plural. It deals with numbers, okay? It tells us exactly, all right, whether it is definite or indefinite. It specifies whether it is being talked about in a general way or in a specific way. Now, so that's why when it is dealing with numbers, you can also differentiate whenever you use your countable nouns and non-countable nouns. Some apple, see, that is countable. So in that case, you can use it in that way, but you cannot count certain nouns such as water or sand. So a little sand, so that is the differences that you will find. But do not get confused with it as long as it is performing the function of specifying it, all right, determining the state of or the object, okay, or telling us more about whether it is singular or plural, that becomes a determiner. So the determiners are articles, all right, the demonstratives and the possessiveness, or in this case, possessive pronoun, all right, and we have the ordinals and the cardinals. And yes, of course, we also have the quantifiers or the frequencies. Now we would move on to the next topic, that is pronouns. You turn to page 40. Now remember, in our first class we discussed about the parts of speech, and we learned that pronouns are those nouns that replaces the noun. So some examples here are he, she, they, we, and so on. Now, here we need to differentiate, all right? In this case, pronouns, we are also going to learn about the reflexive pronoun here particularly. So we need to differentiate whether these are personal pronoun or not. You have the examples there in your text, so I will not be wasting time and discuss that. Now, pronouns, what is its function? It functions as replacing the noun, all right? Let's take the example. Let's say our subject here is Kedyo, all right? Or let's say our subject here is Kedyo. So here is our subject, all right? And in order to replace this, let's say this is a male, all right? So male gender. So let's say we would replace it with he. Now, that becomes a pronoun. However, let's say he is listening, let's say, listening to himself, or let's say we can also go with talking to himself. Okay? Now, here is the difference. Here is he replacing the noun here, so that's why it is a pronoun here, all right? And now you need to take a look at the verb here, talking or listening here. What is he doing? He is listening, doing the action. He is the doer here, all right? He's talking, he is the doer here. But the verb here is being reflected back to the pronoun he, isn't it? So when the action or the verb is being reflected back to the pronoun, it becomes a reflexive pronoun. It becomes a reflexive pronoun. So what is a reflexive pronoun? Just as the name suggests, when you yourself, all right, or when the subject or the doer is performing the action or the verb, all right, and reflected back to the subject, it becomes a reflexive pronoun. Now, another common error that I want to clarify here is that we find I myself did the job. Here, this is a different case here, all right? I myself did the job. So this is a different case here because I myself did the job, all right, reflecting it back, but you are using the pronoun here with a reflexive pronoun in the same sentence here. So that is a different matter. But when you introduce yourself whenever you are asked to give greetings, do not say myself is such and such, myself is Viket. You don't say that, all right? Because see, you already said here myself, and let's say Viket. Now this here is a noun, a subject of its own, all right? It is not performing any action here, isn't it? So you cannot use a reflexive pronoun. So do not go and say myself is Viket, don't say that. You can just simply say my name is Viket and so on. So there is the difference with the reflexive pronoun. We have discussed some of the errors. Remember to keep it in mind. There is also another type of pronoun that is emphatic. And emphatic pronoun are when you want to emphasize something. There are some people who like to advertise themselves and go and say, when they really want to emphasize that they themselves had performed, see, there itself is emphatic, all right? When you are repeating it, it becomes an emphatic. So people who usually say I, me, myself did it, so there are a lot of emphatic pronouns there. So very quickly we will sum up the lesson here. Today we have learned about the determiners. We learned that determiners are associated with numbers. We learned that it specifies things, all right, object for that matter. And we have also learned about the pronoun such as reflexive pronoun and emphatic pronoun. And I hope you find those tips useful. Make sure you try your exercises and also use it, speak it. That's the whole point. There is no need to worry about getting the right answers in the exam, but it is more concerned with how you are using it. So on that note, we have come to the end of our class. Thank you all very much for joining me.